It's 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call this information study session of the Lansing School District Board of Education to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dr. Boddy?
Yes.
Dr. Burrows?
I am here.
Ms. Hodgen? Mrs. Lawrence?
Here.
Mrs. Lilje?
Here.
Mr. Lopez? I thought I saw, oh, there he is. Mrs. Moore?
Here.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Present.
And Mrs. Willis?
Present.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Please, again, accept my apologies. I was freaking out, as you might imagine. I don't believe we have any submissions for public comment this evening, so we will move right into our presentations this evening. First up is a presentation on enrollment and engagement, and Sam, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Several weeks ago, we did a Did You Know on Equip 6, and it was kind of dividing things up in a short-term strategic plan, so to speak. We wanted to flesh that out tonight, and so with that, we're going to do that, and it's a short presentation. It's mostly talking about instruction and how we're going to look at things from into the fall right now. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Chapman.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Superintendent Sinacropi, and good evening, Board of Education and Lansing community. We will be presenting on this evening a short-term strategy with long-term effect. 6 components embedded into a strategic plan very specific to instruction and emphasizing how we are going to have definite continuous response for our students, for our community, as we continue to move through the pandemic and post-pandemic. So I will share at this time a PowerPoint. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Ms. Hester, is there any way that you would be able to share the Equip with 6? Thank you. And if we can, yes. So as stated, Equip with 6 is a short-term strategy for long-term impact. Next slide, please. So collaboration within both the instructional team and the executive team, several weeks ago, we thought about how we can continue to be successful from a stance of instruction as well as with operations and protocols within the organization, and how we can pull together a strategic plan, if you will, very specific to those particular divisions within the organization. So on this evening, we will present to you Equip with 6, a short-term strategy for long-term impact. The areas that will be covered include, we intend to provide culturally responsive teaching and learning through providing academic support, where we will target the needs of grade levels and subgroups. We definitely declare providing a safe environment for teaching and learning. We also want to provide social and emotional and mental health supports, keeping in contact with and being very aligned to preserving fund balance as we move through. With those 5 components, we then will know that we have prepared and will be able to sustain in our new normal. With the new normal, we will anticipate what classrooms will look like, identifying both positives from the pandemic and challenges that we will yet have to address as we move into the upcoming school year 2021-22. So at this time, each of the executive team members will present to you more in depth the initiatives, the accountability, and the associated tasks and action steps that are aligned to each strategy for Equip with 6. Next slide, please.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining. This is our slide. One of our initiatives is to provide culturally responsive teaching and learning. And so the initiatives under that subsection that we'll be working on is the STAR grant. This is going to help improve our school implementation of CRPBIS, and then it's going to introduce evidence-based practices to enhance supports. You're going to hear more about the STAR grant later on from Ms. Cordelia Black. The Marzano evaluation tool is also another resource that we're looking at, and we're looking at how to use that Marzano tool as a growth tool, specifically as it relates to planning and preparation and CRPBIS lessons and extending that. Our equity audit, as was presented last week at the board meeting, the district has selected West Ed for our equity audit. We will be working with them for the remainder of this year as well as next school year. Thank you.
Good evening. Sorry, I didn't know if you're doing an introduction for the next page, but we are providing a safe environment for teaching and learning for our schools and students and staff. One of the things we are doing, of course, is using our bond and sinking funds. And I just wanted to let you have an update on, we had projects that were out for bid right now. We had pre-bid meetings this week for new secure vestibule entries at Geyer Park and Sheridan Road, a new boiler and roof at Kavanaugh, new roof at Pattengill, and this is replacing the roof that was over the former Fairview area that did not get replaced as part of the bond. We're also replacing an air condensing unit at Beekman that services the offices, since they're year-round staffing there. That's important to have a cool air going in there for during the summer months. And then we're also doing the working on the basin drainage for the new athletic fields at Eastern to help drain the water there better. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be issuing bids for replacing the boiler at Sexton. For our COVID-19 response, of course, that is the COVID coordination team led by Sue Wheeler and her team of nurses. And they're, of course, continuing to monitor and report to administration and doing presentations for the board and the public. And then beyond screen to screen, we also are continuing to review the metrics and preparing for a return to in-person learning at some point. We're having regular meetings with our partners such as Sodexo and Dean Transportation to keep them informed and prepared to be ready for when we are back in person. And also the CARES and COVID funding. Those are, of course, those extra funding that we received during this time. As we previously talked about, we are purchased or through Sodexo using these funds to pay for the air purifying units that will go into the schools. And Mark Harsley will talk about that more in detail during his presentation in the next presentation in the board meeting. We also purchased 10,000 desk dividers that will be, actually they came in today, waiting at the warehouse for distribution to the schools right now. And of course, we also have lots of supplies of masks and wipes and hand sanitizers and all that other PPE stuff that would be necessary for getting back to school, and then purchasing more as needed in the near future too. That's it for this group.
Good evening. I am going to talk a bit about the STAR grant. The STAR grant is a 5-year grant totaling $3.7 million over a course of 5 years to basically focus on what Susie had already talked about. So I'm going to talk about what will happen as we continue to implement the STAR grant. The goal is to foster school safety, improve equity in learning, reduce disciplinary actions, support improved academic achievement, enhance learning environments, strengthen the school, family, and community supports, and really focus on sustaining improved school climate to yield positive student outcomes. We plan on doing that through a lot of professional development in regards to behavior management training, crisis prevention intervention, restorative practices, substance abuse prevention training, and early detection prevention training. We've also invested in programming around SEL. We have a SEL website that parents and students are able to access at their own leisure to learn more about self-management and regulation and various, other various SEL components. Our morning meeting and closing circles are activities that teachers have begun to do during our screen-to-screen learning. And they're basically daily activities embedded into classroom routines, typically taking up to about 15 to 30 minutes. Basically what they do is, it's just a creative way of starting out each day, checking in with students, seeing how they're doing, running SEL activities in the classroom. These kind of activities build strong community in the classroom and with the teacher and among the students. Our Minutes Matter, Make Them Count attendance initiative is to advance student achievement by promoting culture and positive attendance, cultivating a mindset around positive attendance, and providing equitable learning opportunities by increasing student attendance. We've done some really cool things this year. We've piloted targeted outreach. We secured a grant called All Here. We've named it Mini. It's an artificial intelligence system, text messaging system, where we are reaching out to our parents once a week to ask them if they need support around attendance and their students' attendance and everything else. Like some parents have responded back saying that, yeah, I'm having technology issues. So automatically we know that there's a technology issue and we'll get the technology department involved. There's other kinds of initiatives such as robocalls, the nudge letters that have been going out monthly. Our superintendent, he's even done a couple robocalls. He just did one yesterday for Count Day. We've had some parent university sessions kind of informing parents of what positive attendance is all about and encouraging them to contact us when they're having problems with either getting their kids to school or they need some kind of help some other way that will help their student attend school on a regular basis. We'll be presenting at our upcoming PCAC meeting as well. Our self-care and wellness program, we started this, I think back in October, if I'm not mistaken, in partnership with the Department of Human Resources, LSEA, LASA, and SETSEG, where we are intentional about focusing on employee health and well-being. We've offered programs such as the Holiday Hustle Step Challenge. We had 366 participants that joined that challenge. We handed out nearly 106 prizes for participants. We've also done things such as a 10-minute chair massages, CrossFit exercising, self-care virtual series, and our upcoming series that we have that will be starting next week is virtual yoga. And so we're looking forward to continuing these programs and offering staff and students as much as we can around mental health support. Thank you.
Good evening. This area relates to academic support, targeting grade levels and the needs. So the first initiative or strategy is related to English learners. We initiated an online after-school touring program for the second semester, and we already have 54 students participating in this program. In addition, we're working and planning on an intensive extended year program during the summer months. The next initiative is early warning systems for pre-K through 12, which is putting in place a system of support which will target students according to attendance, behavior, and academic data. We move on to progress monitoring. All schools do progress monitoring of students by observing if skills are being mastered. However, this is more related to make it a district-wide system and embedding professional development to implement it effectively. We are planning also on a summer program for K through 12, and this is under the Office of Student Learning, led by Dr. Diaz. There's a team working to develop a robust summer program with online options, credit recovery, and there are multiple funding sources to make it a successful program. Finally, we have redesigning instructional systems. The purpose of this initiative is to ensure that as instructional programs are developed, programs are viewed through an equity perspective and with community input. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As we prepare for the new normal across the district, we have some ongoing and some newly established initiatives in place. We continue the work addressing next steps in beyond our current screen-to-screen setting. We collected robust data from staff and families through our inquiry instruments, and we continue to review multiple iterations of the data. We have established the RISE Squared team, as Sergio just shared, to address our instructional systems district-wide. And there are 7 project teams within the RISE Squared. These teams are focused on the development of culturally responsive teaching and learning strategies and embedding social emotional learning into curriculum and instruction. Summer programs to address learning gaps, alternative education programming, and career and technical education options. Looking into standards-based grading, retention, and interventions. Special education programs and services, professional learning for staff, and digging into our new normal, redesigning our classrooms to best support our students as they return. We are also focused on pulling out the positives from this pandemic to enhance our instructional systems moving forward. And finally, we are engaging in ongoing review of our instructional processes and operation systems to ensure optimal learning environments. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'll be talking to you about the initiatives that we have in place to preserve fund balance and to maintain financial stability. One of the ways in which we do this is we rely on responsible and realistic budgeting. This time of year, we receive enrollment projections from Stanford and Middle Cities, and we use them to determine the enrollment number we will use to base our budgeting. And then budgets are created for each school, department, and at the district level. Another way in which we do this is we use these enrollment numbers to help us to staff responsibly. Using a projected enrollment number and trends, staffing decisions are made for the following school year to make sure we are appropriately staffing based on the number of students that we will have. As a district, we also look for grant opportunities to help boost funding for schools and innovative programming that can happen year-round. We just received word yesterday regarding the new magnet grant applications that are coming out next year. Lastly, during the last semester of the school year, schools and the DII office conduct program evaluations to determine the effectiveness of using title funding. We do the same with general budget at the ET level when we are looking to see which programs we need to scale up or down based on their return of investment for the school district with a focus on student outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman and the executive team. I want to just remind the board of something. One of the things that we talked about also last time was this would be a good lead into working on the next generation of our strategic plan. And just as a way of reminder, our strategic plan had 5 main elements in it. It was student achievement, support systems, community outreach, finance, and learning environment. So we would be able to match up many of the things we're doing right now to, if we would choose to use those 5 headings as we look at a new strategic plan. We wanted to do this tonight as a prelude to our presentation for next week, which will be a retooling of what you heard last week. And you had asked many questions about, as we talked about, say a safe learning plan and a safe learning return. We have worked on this all week, so you will be seeing a new PowerPoint for next Thursday that will answer all your questions. So that's for next Thursday. So I wanted you to be aware of that. And now, are there any questions or comments about what was about our previous presentation?
Madam President,
Rodriguez?
thank you. Thank you very much for this very, very ambitious plan. This is very comprehensive. And there are 2 or 3 things that maybe I would like to know more. I don't see timing, when it's going to be accomplished. We're talking about 3 to 5 years, but objective by objective is not telling me when it's going to be accomplished. Second, when you're talking about accountability, many of these things are happening in the buildings. It's not going to happen in downtown. Then what is the plan to make other people, in some areas you already indicated, but in many other areas it's not indicated who is going to be responsible for these objectives. And the third one that I don't see is you have money sometimes in some programs, but other programs don't have the number of dollars. You tell us maybe from ground start for next 5 years for 3 million, something else. But maybe we need to find out how much will cost some of these programs that you try to implement. I don't need answers to now, but just to see how the board can see, and the community can see this plan achievable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. The responsibility for this, well, it depends on the area, obviously, but if you noticed in the PowerPoint, after each of the projects or initiatives, there was a executive team member that was responsible for that particular area. And within that, then it would down to the building administrators, teaching staff, and other departments that may be involved. For instance, finance would be involved, and so would Jessica Benavita's department and some of the grants compliance and things like that. When would it start? It's already started. You know, what we ended up doing with this is that we put some stuff. We wanted to put something down on paper as we looked out 6 or 8 months. So the answer to when is 6 or 8 months and beyond. But we want to start. We wanted to put this forward so that the board, the executive team, our staff, and our community know where we're heading in instruction and finance and areas like that. So the dollars involved, you're correct. Many of these are not necessarily new, but they're things we are doing right now. We want to improve on them and remodel them as needed or not. So there is no particular dollar figure. We didn't put this together in mind of spending really any additional money except what we talked about, especially when we talked about the finance and Mr. Lang talked about the bond projects and things like that, is to be wise about how we do things and make good choices and plan for the future. So that's what a lot of this is part of mini strategic plan.
Thank you. And another thing that just came to my mind is any evaluations of these programs, when the evaluations are going to happen, if we are going to have evaluations in one way or another. But what I say, you know, it's a process, and you come back and maybe later on, then we have evaluation of this plan or this program or this at this time, or whenever. And the tool we are going to use for evaluation, pre-evaluation, evaluation, or after the program, whatever. But without evaluating, how we are going to know we are making progress? And I don't need an answer today, but maybe something to think about.
And you told me tonight you'd written all your questions down ahead of time, so I appreciate that.
Rose?
Did you say I'm up next? Who's not up next?
You're next.
Okay. I didn't hear that.
We're waiting with bated breath.
Sorry, I'm having cat problems.
Okay.
Kirk has decided to join the meeting. He's right here. So I don't want to dwell too much on their program evaluation element because Nino already spoke to it. I would like to know more about, and you don't have to answer with a lot of detail now, but what's the program evaluation or policy analysis model that we have? What does that system look like? I'd like to have a clearer sense. And I think it would be very helpful for the board, even if it's in summary form, that when we do have a program evaluation, that we get some kind of top level, feedback for us so that we're aware that our program is evaluated and what some of the outcomes were, even if it's it doesn't have to be that technical, just so we have a general sense. Because a lot of times, we want there to be program evaluation. We're told that there is, but we never really see the product of it. And it makes it much easier for us to exercise oversight and have a sense of what's working and what's not when we're sort of part of that process, even at the very end. But the one question I have, can someone talk a little bit more about the Rise Squared initiative?
I will turn that over to Dr. Chapman or Dr. Diaz.
Thank you, Superintendent Sinacropi. Dr. Kamala Diaz is leading the Rise Squared initiative. She has put in place 7 project teams, and those project teams, that's where the stakeholder, as far as school level administration, comes into play. And so, Dr. Diaz, can you expound on Rise Squared?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. As we were looking at each of the components in our Equip with 6, there was kind of a natural coming together of several of those different buckets. And so Rise Squared stands for redesigning instructional systems for educational equity. So that's where the Rise Squared came from. And those 7 project teams that I named off as we were going through the plan are led by members of the Office of Student Learning. And underneath those project leads, we have teachers, nurses, student support specialists, parents, community members. So that team is open for people to participate. And if anyone is interested in joining any of those teams, you are absolutely more than welcome to do so. They're really working. We met for the first time 2 weeks ago. So they've started their meetings already, and most of them are meeting each week and working on ultimately providing recommendations to the executive team for these different pieces. So for example, the summer programs group, they're working on summer programming K-12, looking at what types of in-person learning options we will have available, what kind of remote learning options we'll have available for families that want to remain remote at that time, and just how we can create dynamic experiences for students so that we can help fill in some of those gaps. So each of the teams is working on a number of kind of smaller pieces And I would certainly be happy to, share more information or talk further about that if you'd like me to do so at another time or whenever works.
So it's a fairly comprehensive way to try and improve equity throughout the system by trying to bring in external stakeholders as well as people within the organization. Would that
Correct.
be a fair characterization? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That helps a
You're
little bit.
welcome.
Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Sam, remind me, Mr. Superintendent, just remind me what ROI means.
Return on investment.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's sort of what Dr. Burrows was talking about. It's an evaluation of the program, and is it worth spending the funds on?
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm looking at the enrollment projections, rollover, all that projection stuff of students coming in. That's what we're talking about, right? Student enrollment.
Well, we kind of made a switch a little bit. We'll have some enrollment stuff next week, but we don't have our normal enrollment and engagement this week. But we wanted to make sure the board saw this, so that's kind of a replacement tonight.
Well, okay. So we're talking about enrollment projections, fiscal spend on trends, etc. So in terms of enrollment projections, okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
What is your thought, and what is the thought of the executive team in terms of how this COVID pandemic is going to affect us going forward? Are we looking at students? Do we have any idea if parents are telling us that they will come back to Lansing schools? I know some parents are looking for alternatives because some want their kids in school, right? But after all is said and done, I know, are you looking at that at all in terms of after the pandemic enrollment, and are we going to be over capacity for enrollment, or are we going to have some problems? I don't know. I'm just asking because
Well,
the other
certainly,
thing that was interesting, through my years, and not that sitting, it's good or bad or in between. But I've always knew that the enrollment projections were done by the what's it called? Nino's position when he was there, for example.
deputy superintendent.
Or the elementary
Elementary and secondary ed directors.
secondary leaders, okay? So even though I know enrollment means money, okay, so I can understand that. But it's kind of a switch. I mean, it's just interesting to me, the way that we're looking at it now. Now, if that is not the team that will do the enrollment projections for as per usual, that's okay. It just caught my eye. And I think that obviously, again, enrollment means money. So Lang is certainly, a person in finance. Susie, with all the employee issues that she has, it was kind of interesting to me to see that she would be involved in enrollment projections. Not that it's bad or anything, it's just interesting.
Well, I'll just respond quickly. In the enrollment projections and staffing, which is HR's responsibility, that kind of go hand in hand. And many of you who have been on the board for a while have probably heard us. We get projections, or enrollment projections for next year from a couple different sources. So we read through all that material. But the final decision in terms of numbers, and you're right about elementary and secondary ed directors, but they didn't really set the projections. They set the projections for their area. The total projections would come, typically it comes with a combination of the superintendent, the deputy superintendent, the chief financial officer, and we look at trends and make a decision on how what we are looking at for our projected enrollment for next year. And that's all part of it. Part of what the reason that got put in where it got put in is because it kind of fits in that spot, because that kind of informs us on what our staffing needs to look like, down to how many third grades do we need at a particular school. So there's lots of things that go into it.
No, I understand, and thank you. It was a thing that I noticed that I wanted to ask. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Mrs. Willis, go right ahead.
Thank you. I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to thank the superintendent and the administrative team for putting together this like bite-sized, comprehensive chunk of information. So when I was reading it, I appreciate the questions about evaluation. I was reading it more along the lines of like, these are sort of the bite-sized pieces. And then as you assess how they're going, then you would sort of give us updates. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the updates on this, especially as it relates to preparing for the new normal and what will be all the implications of what happens once we start returning to bricks and mortar learning for our kids. So I just wanted to thank you guys for that. Yeah, when that happens, Nathan's fingers crossed, but if and when that happens. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Oh, Mrs. Lilje, go ahead.
Just had a thought, just echoing everything that's been said already. Thank you for this. But I also thought it was pretty, it was good to take the initiative to think like, oh, we have to come up with some short-term strategies, and we might as well think about how that could bridge into the long-term strategic plan. So I just wanted to validate that effort as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We are going to move on to our next presentation this evening, which is Sodexo updates. I see Mr. Mark Harsley is with us. Sam, are you going to say anything?
Sure.
Okay.
What can you say about Mark Harsley that hasn't been said before? No, I'm kidding. Thank you for being here, Mark. And Sodexo, as you know, is our custodial and food service partners. And we talked a few weeks ago about some equipment we were going to purchase to start installing in our buildings to improve air quality and some things like that. And I thought it would be a good time to bring Mark in and explain it a little better than I could when you asked me the questions. And also, if you have any other questions, now you're going to see some stuff from us next week about, you know, Sodexo's part in getting us back face to face. But if you have some specific questions for Mark and that, I'm sure he wouldn't. And I'm sorry for speaking for you, Mark, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind responding. So, Mark, do you need a screen share? What do you got going on here?
Yeah, if you allow me to share my screen with you, I'll show you some quick information here. So I'm going to hit the button here. I'm going to get this to act right. And I hope that you can see a space age kind of a piece of equipment on the screen. Can you?
Not yet. Lynette, does he have the ability to share, or do we have to do something there?
I did give panelists sharing right.
Okay. Do you have could you share it? You have his stuff?
Give me one.
There we go. Mark's got it.
Okay, great.
There you go. And now
there we go.
All right. I hope you can see it. Thank you very much. We think it's just really great, and it gives us a lot of joy in our work to be able to be a part of the team that helps provide just simply great student learning environments. And so from all of the cooks in the kitchen to the custodians to the groundskeeper to the skilled technicians, just being a part of a team that helps us provide the right environment is really cool to do. So I just want to share with you a couple pieces of equipment, as Superintendent Senacope referred to earlier, that helps us in that fight. I have been on record to say if you don't address air quality first and foremost when you're in a flu season or in a pandemic, everything else you do is minimalized at that point. So as you may be aware or may not be aware, in many of our school buildings, what we have are called unit ventilators, and those are the mechanisms that are usually against the exterior wall of the building that provide heat to the building, no AC, but heat. And they also bring in outside air. And so to the question of when we are fighting a pandemic and seeking to eradicate and irradiate viruses and germs, we know from an industry perspective and from our healthcare partners that UVC, ultraviolet light, particularly at the C spectrum, is the most effective way of doing that. So in those rooms, and there are 659 of them, we have, I'm grateful for Mr. Lang's leadership in this, to provide the unit that you're looking at right there. And that will go into the various classrooms across the school district, all those that have unit ventilators as heat, but no central air movement type of thing. And so what these units do is they will treat about 1,000 square foot, which is the average size of our classrooms. And it uses a mechanism that I'll show a little bit later here, but it's very quiet. The reason I have the screen at this point is I want you to be able to see that its decibel level does not interfere with instruction. So that was really important to us, that we picked up a piece of equipment that wasn't intrusive or the main emphasis while learning was going on. So at its lowest, it's 54 decibels. At its highest, it's 62. As you can see in connection with some lounge chairs there, is that it's not a very big unit, but it is a very powerful unit. The technical specifications, I think, are important to know as we are talking about how to best keep the air clean and germ-free, is that this is, first thing I would say to you is that it does not produce any ozone. Many school districts have fell into what I will call maybe the Costco trap. And that is, what I would mean by that is buying a residential grade piece of equipment to try to treat a commercial or industrial space. And so I'm glad for the leadership here that allowed us to invest in medical grade filtration. There is a difference to that because what we know in purifying air, if you do not have enough energy, if you do not have the right wavelength on the UV spectrum, what you will do is ionize the air. And ionizing the air is not a good thing at all, because that means that you are producing ozone, and then you have ozone in the classroom, and then that takes the air quality down. So you don't want to do that. If there's ever an instance of you get what you pay for in air purifications that have UVC lighting as the main way of killing germs, this would be a great example of that. So I did want you to know that this was an investment in medical grade filtration and no ozone associated with it. And for those of us with the instructional background, we know that a picture can be worth 1,000 words. That kind of gives you a look at the inside of it. And what also has to happen in medical grade equipment is that it has to be able to capture germs that are as much as 0.3 of a micron. If you'll remember from your physics class or way back if you were paying attention, that the average strand of hair in width is probably about 50 microns. And so what happens is when those small microns go through the filters, the UVC is strong enough and broad enough and robust enough to kill it. And then fresh air passes through and it helps keep our students safer. So that is how the air purifiers work. On the in-classroom side, there's also a side that speaks to our mechanical and our larger pieces of mechanical equipment, some of our newly remodeled parts of buildings and things like that. This same system is customized and scaled up or scaled down to treat more air, more square footage as a result. But the premise is basically the same as what you see here. It just takes more energy and more more things along the UV light scale to get it done. So that is the first part of what I wanted to share with you. And I suppose it would be wise to take a break and a breath and ask if you have any questions about anything that you've seen so far. Hearing no questions, I'll move right along.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. Okay, so I know, I will confess, I know next to nothing about HVAC or filtration or all of that. So I'm operating at a very low base, but I may not be the only person who's in the audience if they're watching or who are seeing their kids who have that level of knowledge. So I know there are particular standards of filtration that the EPA or the CDC have recommended for dealing with COVID. And I just want to know that whatever we're purchasing is meeting those standards. Like I read somewhere like a MERV rating of 13, which I'm not totally exactly sure what that means. Like, does that apply for this? If so, does it reach that level? So can you, I'm less concerned about the technicalities of what each of these devices do, and more, are they meeting the recommended medical thresholds? So if you could speak to those issues a little bit as you go along.
Absolutely, and I'll go back to, and I think the common term that most of people would be able to understand is what's the HEPA level of filtration, and that's why I tried to give a visual example of how small of a germ or virus that the equipment is capable of dealing with. So when we say in our industry that we have purchased medical grade air filtration, that's the highest standard. You can't get any better in the fight against killing germs and viruses that would be airborne. So we could talk all night about the schematics behind it and give you a lot of fancy, literally calculus computations of how they do that, but it is medical grade, and that is the best that we can do. And then John again alerted me to this. There are some school districts who did not invest in this grade of equipment, and they had to start over from scratch to get the right grade in the classroom to keep the air quality. So if you want more of the technical side of it, I certainly can provide that to you. To give you the names and the quantifications. Thank you for that question. So there is one other piece of equipment I would like to share with you as well. We know that from time to time, student staff will unknowingly come to school and be sick. And the great thing about all this equipment, it goes beyond just COVID-19. It's as equally as effective during any cold and flu season. This is not equipment that is just for the pandemic. It will help us in providing healthier environments 365 days a year, anytime that we have a student in a learning environment. This is UV lighting at a different scale. It's UVC in combination with a violet colored light on the spectrum. And this is an instant disinfectant without using chemicals. Some of the chemicals that can be used to kill germs also have side effects. One of the reasons why in the medical profession and the medical side of our business and in the school side, we want to use as few chemicals as possible based on the reactions that students can and do have to chemical cleaning. And so what you're looking at with the Bolt unit, again, it will disinfect an entire classroom, 1,000 square feet inside of an hour. We have to make sure that there's no fish aquariums, no turtles, lizards, or any other ant farms in the room when they're, because when it starts to irradiate the germs in the room, it can kill certain plant life and some other things that may be insects as well, or reptiles. This unit designs us so that the continuum of education keeps moving along uninterrupted. If a student or staff member believes that they have a really bad cold or COVID-19, God forbid, we can go into that classroom and an hour later certify that the room is still safe to be used without waiting the standard 72 hours that would be from a chemical clean and a chemical clean only. So it uses broad spectrum UV light to do that, and our folks start their training on it next week. So with that said, that's the high level approach to what I wanted to share with you as we continue to work through when, where, and what grade levels come back. That will determine our priority into which in-unit room air purifiers, where they go, when they go, how they go. And we are now down, since we have them on site and have them assembled, we're literally a week away from being able to get a classroom up and rolling from a healthy air purification standard. With that, thank you for your time, and I'll entertain any questions you may have at this point.
Thank you, Mark. Are there questions?
Mark, how many of these UV units do we have?
So the one that you're looking at now, we have 8 of them. These are the ones that are reactionary to someone being testing positive for COVID-19 or feeling or believing that a student or staff member might be asymptomatic and but still be positive. We have 8 of these. 6 of them are stationary. They're at all 3 of the high schools, Gardner, Rich, and Beekman. We have 2 more that are configured differently that go in mobile vans, and the rest of the district is divided between north and south. And each van, should a teacher or a principal call in a case that needs this equipment, then they will be dispatched to that. We have the same equipment at some other accounts in Michigan City, Indiana, Nixa, Missouri come to mind. And what we know about each day with normal student participation, they're on both of those school districts on that 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on kind of schedule. There are about 4 to 5 rooms each day that need to be taken care of with this level of disinfection. And so, but they're only a third of the size of Lansing. So that is how we came up with the math on how many units we needed and where we needed to have them positioned at.
You said they're stationary, but I imagine they're still easily movable from one classroom to another.
Yeah, when I say stationary, I mean they won't come out of that building. The one
Gotcha.
That's assigned to the high school, to each high school and each of them stays in that building, locked up and secured. The other mobile ones will be locked up at the physical plant building.
How long does it take to complete a sanitization cycle?
1 hour.
Okay. You might not know this off the top of your head, but do you know how much these units cost?
I do know that off the top of my head. The unit that you're looking at right now is $21,999. The in the room air purifiers are $979 a piece, $979.
So this UV sanitization unit, let me just restate and make sure I'm clear on what you said. It's $21,000.
That is correct.
So when people ask, why don't you have these in every classroom or in every building? It's because they're $21,000 a piece.
That is correct. We thought that we would take a more financially judicious approach to this. If we need to buy more, we can buy more. But if that happens, it's kind of a bad omen, right? We hope there are not that many people that are testing positive that are actually coming into the buildings. And we hope the other protocols, some of the great work that the COVID team is doing on the other side of it, help prevent some of that germ from even coming to the building. So yeah.
But like you said, like in years to come, if it's 2 years from now and it's flu season and a teacher learns that one of the students didn't come to school today because they have the flu, they could say, hey, can we get this unit into my classroom and sanitize it, correct?
That is correct.
Which would be a pretty wonderful thing, I think, if you're a teacher and you don't want to get the flu and you don't want your other students to get the flu. Great. Any other questions from board members?
We have Dr. Body and Mr. Lopez with hands up that I see.
I don't know why I can't see that tonight. I apologize, everybody. Dr. Body, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just want to speak to the scientific veracity of this. I mean, this is really cool. We're actually, for the public's information, we're using UV light to disinfect the masks that doctors are using in hospitals, because especially early on in the pandemic, we didn't have enough PPE for the providers. So what we were doing is we were using UV light to disinfect masks. So it does really work, and it's the same technology that we're using, in hospitals across America to cut down on the amount of PPE that we're using. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Body. Mr. Lopez, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. So Dr. Body and Harsley. So is there any issue with somebody, there's always someone who objects to things, that the UV rays are going to affect my kid if he goes down there or whatever. Do we have any of that kind of a thing to worry about?
Nothing that from independent testing would say that there's a danger to a person. When the unit that you see on the screen is in use, yes, the windows are covered so that the violet spectrum of light does not seep out into the hallway or to outside. I would make that, the danger of that would be like looking at a welding light. You wouldn't want to do that. That could cause them. So there is training and safety protocols that go beside the operation of that. On the first unit, it's encased in a unit that allows zero UV light to come outside of that casing. And so the design in the casing is what runs the cost up to a medical grade piece of equipment versus another piece, so that there is no danger that a person would be danger from looking at the light.
Okay, well, thank you for that. But okay, on the other unit, you're going to train, you said you're going to have training for your staff to, for example, to change the filters ever so often, or how is that going to happen?
Yeah, there has to be, for the unit that's here, there has to be specialized training on how to operate these in disinfecting the classroom using this piece of equipment. The first piece of equipment that I showed you, there's no training needed for that. That's just a plug it in and let it work. It's by design to be non-invasive and extremely safe. This, you should not be operating a $21,000 piece of equipment without the training that goes along with operating it safely. It has to be done after school hours are over, and there's a whole set of protocols that go in place. To your point, if this piece of equipment here detects a human body in the room, it won't even come on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So back again with the first unit, there's no filter to change?
There are actually there are 2 filters in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
2 filters and 2 UV light units.
Okay, and those are changed every 12, 30 days or what?
One is every 6 months.
Once every 6 months.
Yeah, this one right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor dancing around. That's it. Well, depending on uses, once every 6 months, and then the larger one is once every 2 years.
Okay. And your staff is trained on that, how to, it's probably not difficult, but.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lopez, if people have their hands up for some reason, I can't see it tonight. So if any other board members have questions, please.
Macy and Nathan.
Dr. Burrows and Ms. Liligy.
Dr. Burrows, go ahead.
I think Missy should go first. Her hand was up before me.
Thank you. Missy, go ahead.
I might have missed this, but how many of these smaller units do we have?
We have 659 in this first order. That is the number of classrooms right now that we have identified that are heated by unit ventilators. So we may get, as we bring students back and get into instruction, we may find that we need more for the nurse's office or for in the gymnasium or some other areas of the buildings that students congregate at. But until we see the plan and how the flow of students will be, we'll hold off on a second order until we know more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Burrows?
Sorry, this is a point of clarification for me. So we said we were going to buy 659 of the first type, the room-based ones, and those are roughly $1,000 a piece. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
And then we're buying 8 of the big sort of room rehabilitation ones that are 21,000. So
Correct.
that's a little over $800,000 that the district is going to be spending on improving the air ventilation for health and safety purposes for the pandemic, correct?
Well, actually, in this first phase, the district is spending 1.5 million.
Okay.
Because there are other UV disinfectant pieces of equipment that are custom pieces that go into air handling units, into mechanical closets that are much larger. But that air handling unit may service 8 rooms instead of 1, just depending on the design of the airflow in that building. And that's a part of this first phase as well.
Sam, can you talk about how that fits into our overall budget and what we're getting from the CARES Act, et cetera?
It's paid all through the CARES Act.
Okay.
Part of all of the CARES funding we've gotten so far is if you do something to assist in air quality, and this fit right into what we needed to do.
Do we have reason to believe that there'll be some spillover benefits, not just the pandemic, but general health and communicability of illness in flu season, et cetera, as we move forward in over the years?
Well, I'll answer quick first, Mark, but then jump in. But Mark did respond to that, and it's good for the cold and flu and whatever else. And I think that if you think about it, I just don't think we can go wrong having what we have right now. It'll certainly keep our air quality better than what it is right now. Having them.
Yep.
Mark, did you have anything that I'm?
I'd be interested in Dr. Body's view as a medical doctor on what their projections on cold and flu when society is in the habit of washing their hands and covering their mouths and having. I've read that the flu season will be diminished because of those same things, but I'd rather have somebody more qualified than me speak on it.
Well, that's what we hope. I mean, certainly this year, we're seeing less influenza cases than we did previously because not everybody, but enough people are wearing masks to reduce transmission and people aren't gathering as much. So there's less opportunity to spread all kinds of respiratory viruses, not just COVID. Now, how will that translate to next year when we're back in schools and we're back towards quote unquote normal? Well, that's, we don't know yet, but hopefully the good hygiene habits that we've learned this year will continue onwards.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that I understood it and that anybody watching was following along. Thank you.
Great questions.
I see no more hands raised, Mrs. Lawrence.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Harsley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, any comments from board members this evening?
Madam President,
Mrs. Willis.
can you provide us just with a quick update on where things stand with the superintendent search?
I certainly can. As I think board members are aware of, our posting closed last week.
Tuesday.
And you should have received a series of emails yesterday with information from the Michigan Association of School Boards with information about how to access the application materials and then with a link to the application materials. So we've had a couple dozen applicants. Very excited to start to look through those application materials more closely this weekend. Please make sure that board members are doing the same because MASB will be in attendance at our meeting next week. And we will be having a discussion with them regarding our candidates who we're going to choose to interview. If board members would like any of the application materials printed, please let Lynette know. And also please be mindful that these names and this application material needs to remain confidential. So I've asked Lynette to print it for me because it's going to be a lot easier for me to look through it if it's in a hard copy rather than online. If anyone else is encountering the same thing, please feel free to reach out to her, but just be really mindful that please don't leave it. Probably people aren't really having friends come over nowadays, but if there's anybody coming in your house, make sure that you have it put away so that it's not something that's readily available for other people to look at. Also, board members, please refrain from discussing any names or specifics with anyone else. We will be having, like I said, a discussion with MASB next week. And then as a quick reminder, I know I sent an email out earlier this week, but next Saturday morning, February 20th, we will have a virtual board retreat at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. It should be pretty brief. I'm thinking probably an hour and a half. We don't have too many things on the agenda. I just want to start having some discussion about what we're specifically looking for in a superintendent. So please come prepared to discuss kind of our vision for the future of the district. Any other comments or questions from board members? All right, well, I know we have a regular meeting scheduled for a week from tonight. So yes, ma'am, Miss Lilgy.
I apologize. This is something that's been rolling around in my head, but I thought I might as well say
apologize.
I've been hearing from my fellow parents where my kids go to school that they would like to know, I think, the highlights of things that we talk about, especially curious about going back to school plans and understanding the metrics that inform that decision. I'm wondering if there might be a way we could do some kind of Facebook post, like highlights of the school board meeting with links to make it easier for people. I was like, well, just watch the school board meeting or just go to the website. And they're like, it's hard to navigate. It's hard to go to the website and click Board of Education and find the meeting and watch the meeting, So that's just a request that I've been hearing. And I know there is a lot of curiosity about going back to school when we see the other people around us figuring that out. I think to get the messaging out about the results of the survey, about the metrics that inform our decisions, could maybe help folks who are just wondering how to find out the information if they can't come to the board meeting.
So, Ms. Lilgy, I think the presentation that the nursing staff gave last week had some really good metrics in that. Maybe we could kind of post that to the front page of the website and say, these are the criteria that we consider when we're making the decision about whether or not to open buildings in person.
I think that'd be great. That'd be great.
Okay.
Madam President?
Yes, sir, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Sinacropi, do we have any update on the calls made to those individuals who did not answer the survey or who did have other language issues?
Yes, we do. The ELL staff made over 2,000 phone calls this past week and a half, and we had about 300 responses, some positive and some negative. So yeah, we did. They made all the calls that we had talked about.
So how does that break out? 4 in person and 4.
I don't have that number. I know that just 300 responded. That's what I know, and I know there were some of them. So there were some on each side of the question. I don't know what the numbers were. Do we, Jessica? Do we know the numbers on those 300?
Yes. So we had approximately 341 of those calls are students that said they would like to return. Of those 341, 65 were duplicates to people that had already turned in the survey. So just over about 250 were new answers to us regarding the calls that Sergio's office had made.
So are you saying that the majority wanted to come back to school?
No, that's 200, that would be 341 out of that 2,000 that wanted to return.
Okay, so the other 1,700 people did not respond or said no?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. So if you didn't find them, the answer is no, right? Or they didn't respond to the message or conversation? That would be a no?
That's
Yes,
correct.
I see.
And can we have a sense of what the affirmative, no, we don't want to come back responses were, as opposed to simply not responding at all?
Yes, I have the breakout. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have the breakout of the calls that were made, the total calls, who chose hybrid, who chose to remain screen to screen, and then families that we were not able to reach or that had disconnected phone numbers. We did also find out details about families that have moved in the meantime, but had not let the district know and had not been attending. So there was kind of a variety, honestly, with the calls of 2,000, but we will be breaking those numbers down for you next week with the board presentation that we're going to do. I just happen to have the yeses on my mind today, so.
Good.
May I say one quick thing too? Some of those phone calls took like half an hour for each, because once the parents were able to communicate with the school officials that speak the same language, they asked many, many questions. And some of the questions were not even related to the school, but to food services outside of health. So it was good to communicate with them. And I want to thank all the bilingual instructional assistants and all the cultural brokers that spend so much time connecting with our families.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was a really uphill battle and heavy lifting. So, Mr. Keck, I echo your thanks.
Mrs. Lawrence, real quick, just got a text from John, and the school board meeting is posted the next day on our YouTube channel. So anybody that's involved in YouTube, it's pretty easy to find Lansing School District. They would be able to find the board meeting the following day. So that would be tomorrow for this board meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? All right, everyone. Well, with no further business before the board at 7:14, we are adjourned, and we will be together again next week.